Schiffman, if you could begin by telling us a little bit about your connection to the Jewish Publication Society.
Well, I don't know how many years ago it was when Nachum Sarna, who had been my professor at Brandeis, was connected very closely with JPS, that the suggestion came up that I should write a book on the Dead Sea Scrolls. I started working on the book. I worked on it for years, and then, you could say almost humorously, I had the bad luck that the scrolls, which had been, well, for the most part, kept secret for so many years, suddenly were revealed. They were now all available. So the book I had written had to be rewritten. But this gave me the opportunity to create a book that JPS published, Reclaiming the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is really the first major work to take into account all of the scrolls, not simply the 7 that were discovered by the Bedouin boy and a few extras, but really to synthesize this whole collection and to place it in the context of the history of Judaism. You know, that over the years, between that project and the beginning of Outside the Bible, I, here and there, gave them some help on one or another thing, some advice, and always had in my mind this idea that we really needed to get all of these Second Temple books back into a Jewish context. Now, let me explain that much of the message of Reclaiming the Dead Sea Scrolls was that these works should not be seen as some kind of presaging of Christianity, as much of the literature did, but rather as a set of Jewish texts which tell us what was going on in the intellectual and religious ferment, really, of Second Temple times. We know that historically, since the period of the Maccabees, it's the period of the revolt against Rome. All these things that were going on were really exciting things. And people didn't realize the extent to which the religious thought side of Judaism was experiencing this really important period of time, really important development. So the purpose of this new work, Outside the Bible, was to try and take all the literature from Second Temple times and get it out to the Jewish community, wider intellectual and academic community, our Christian friends, with a commentary that would make very clear the Jewish links. Often we refer to it as a Jewish commentary, but you have to realize many of our Christian colleagues were involved in the project and contributed to the project, feeling, as all of us do, that the Jewish context of this work and the Jewish continuity of this work, that is to say, the ancient texts we're talking about, had to be made clear. One last point about the project as a whole. What we try to do, and I think is really exciting about this, is we're really interested mostly in the issues of Bible and Bible interpretation. And this is also very important for JPS because the Bible has really been at the center of JPS's work over the ages. And this particular aspect, starting already with the translation of the old JPS translation of the Torah, and then through the new and the commentaries and all this, what we're showing here is another stage in the development of the Bible. And it's a stage in which the Bible is being interpreted, being understood, being used for a lot of things.
When you take a global view of these texts as they're now organized and presented, what real new light do they shed on that period of history and our understanding of the Hebrew Bible and Christian Bible?
One of the biggest issues that I think everybody grapples with is that our civilization as a whole is based on what we call often the Judeo-Christian tradition. Now, this is not necessarily a good term because of the fact that it obscures the differences in these traditions, but one thing is very clear. Judaism and Christianity originate in various understandings and interpretations of the thing that we call the Tanakh, that academics call the Hebrew Bible, and that believing Christians call the Old Testament. The way that set of books, what we call the Tanakh, was interpreted in Second Temple times, and especially in the 2nd and 1st centuries BCE and the 1st century CE, shaped the whole later development of Western civilization.
But I have to press you on one point.
Go ahead.
And that is that we have to acknowledge that some of these books in this collection were specifically excluded from the Jewish canon.
In publishing this work, we are reversing, in a certain sense, the process of exclusion of these works.
That's an important point.
Not because we claim they're in the Bible. We don't. Of course, we recognize that there's a biblical canon. None of us, as committed Jews, wants to overturn the idea of the sanctity of the Bible. But what we do want to do is we want to say to Jews that works which once upon a time, because of a set of arguments that were going on in the Jewish community, and because of the fear of the rabbis that important principles of Judaism would be compromised, were excluded, works which people were told they should not read, we would argue today that there is a great value to reading these works. When we got going on this work, we realized it would be a really big job. I had a little experience of this nature from being one of the two editors of the Encyclopedia of the Dead Sea Scrolls with Oxford. But actually for JPS, they really had done something that involved so many scholars and so much organizational work. We had 2 grants from the National Endowment for the Humanities, which helped to make this possible, which I think the editors are very proud of, because this shows that they judge this to be a really significant scholarly work and an important work to come out at this time. And in the United States, we had a realization that the Jewish community needed to be able to see these things within the Jewish context, and that the wider academic and Christian community needed that as well.